Hello, welcome to episode 200 of the CraftHouseMagic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 3rd of March. So welcome everybody, I hope you've all had a lovely crafty week since the last time I've spoken to you, and I'm here to show you all the things that I've been making in the last 7 days. So today I have some knitting, some sewing, which is some baby dressmaking. I have a gadget, a blast from the past. I have a question from the Ask Me Anything thread on the Ravelry group, and some information on my shop at the end of the podcast. So because we're on episode 200, I thought I'd do a little celebratory giveaway where I'm going to give away a little prize pack, which I'll leave as a surprise so that when it's opened it's even more exciting. And what you have to do to win that is just make sure that you're subscribed to my channel, like this video, and just pop a comment down below, and I'll draw from those comments on next week's podcast. So make sure you watch next week's video as well, and then I can get in contact with you and get the prize sent off. So let's get on with the good stuff already, shall we? So I'm going to start with the knitting, but of course if you want to skip along to any of the sections you can use the progress bar at the bottom of the video. So I have been working on Adam's mittens, and this is the Great Ambition pattern by Walla, and it's a Jamieson and Smith yarn that I had in my stash, and I have finished one mitten and I'm really pleased with how this came out. And I have blocked this one mitten just to see how it sort of neatens up. I love this snake motif on the front of the glove and the details around it, including like this leafy feature, and on the back there's a lovely grid pattern with borders around the edges as well. I love the fact that it's got a 2x2 rib on the cuff with the sort of traditional Harry Potter stripes there. This is obviously for Slytherin, and Adam is a Harry Potter fan as well, and I thought that these would be good to keep him nice and warm when we go for a walk. And ideal if you're pushing a pushchair as well, because you really get cold hands if you have to have your hands out pushing a pushchair, and it's got a S on the thumb as well. These are a lovely pattern, I really like them. One word of warning though, so I've got a relatively sort of small to medium sized hand, and this is pretty snug on me, so I think you might have to sort of go up a needle size if you find that you have got a larger hand, or sort of extend through the ribbon a bit longer, I think, or perhaps try and elongate the chart just at the top above the snake up here if you have got longer fingers. But I found that this fit me nicely, and Adam has got very similar size hands and feet to me, so that's absolutely perfect. I can check on myself whether they're going to fit. So that is the first one. The only thing that I have changed is I've used 2.5mm needles rather than the 2.25 suggested in the pattern, because I knit really tightly and I just know that I always need to go up at least 1/4 millimeter to make sure that they're not too tight in terms of the colour work. Now that I've blocked these, the colour work looks much neater, and it makes my colour work look like I do it much better than I do. But I'm really pleased with how that's come out. I haven't started on the second one yet because I had only got 11 grams of the green left, so I did order some more and that has come through now. But if you look really closely, I'm pretty sure there's a slight colour difference. So what I'm going to do is just start fresh on this ball rather than having sort of some of the mitten knitted in the old skein and then continuing with the new one. If it's all in the same skein, I don't think you'd notice when they're sort of next to each other rather than being continuous on the same glove. So I am going to do that. I picked this up from Pearlescence and the postage was only £1.50, so that's really good, because I only wanted to order this really. I didn't want to buy any more yarn because I'm sort of saving my money for the East Anglia Yarn Festival at the end of March, or end of this month. So I thought I just want to order this, and because it's only a 25 gram skein, I thought, oh, it's going to be like a full £3 something postage, UK postage. But actually with Pearlescence it was only £1.50 for this, so that's really good. So I think it came to £4.20 with the postage as well, so not too bad at all. And I have plenty of the grey yarn left to do the rest of it, so that's absolutely fine. So I used 17 grams of the green for one glove, so that's why I needed 2 skeins of because they're 25 grams each. And I can't quite remember how much I used for the grey. I think it might have been 10 or 11 grams, so one 25 gram skein is fine for the 2 gloves. So hopefully I shall actually get on to the next glove by the next episode. I didn't start it actually, I've got an excuse. The yarn only came yesterday, so I hadn't started it. So that's my excuse for not finishing your gloves, Adam, sorry. So with these mittens, I wanted to give them a block to neaten up my colour work, but I didn't want to spoil the 2x2 rib, because I think blocking out 2x2 rib can sometimes sort of spoil that cosy, snug feel that it gives to your wrist. So what I did is I actually soaked just the bottom of the mitten, and then I used my mitten blockers from Wood & Co, which have got the same pointy shape at the top, when I'd squeezed the water out of them. And I left them to dry, and it's got a separate finger bit as well that goes into the finger up here, like so. So that actually when they dried, this bit was blocked, and so was the finger, because that's the bit that I wet, but I didn't wet the cuff, so it didn't sort of block out and stay like that when I'd taken it off the blockers, which was, I wasn't sure whether it was going to quite work, so I'm really glad it did. So I got my blockers from a company called Wood & Co, and they do a nice range of different blockers with different sort of shapes cut out, and I picked these heart ones because I thought they were really sweet. I do have another shaped mitten blocker as well, which is a smooth shaped one, so they do different shapes for different types of mittens. You don't necessarily need to block them out, but I do like blocking my mittens and socks out, especially if I'm going to give them as a gift, and especially with colour work, because my colour work needs a bit of blocking after I finished it. I have done some more work on a pair of socks that my mum started for me as well. I'd got some gorgeous self-striping yarn from Dragon Hill Studio, and I'd already knitted my friend Liz a pair of socks from this yarn, and I'd got approximately 50 grams left. It was 100 grams ball, and I thought, well, I want to use every little scrap because it's a really nice yarn. It's a black and grey stripe with these really cool pops of bright colours in between, so I thought that was really nice. I got my mum to knit me a sock tube out of this. So this was originally all one long sock tube with 2 cuffs, one either end. And then what I did is I actually got my mum to make sure that she finished on pretty much the same stripe as it started on, so that it would be a matching sock. So with this stripe, the stripe is a symmetrical stripe, so whether you're knitting the skein backwards or forwards, it comes up the same pattern, if that makes sense, because this was knitted like that, and then I'm able to cut it into 2 and then make it into a pair of socks. So I have a tutorial on my channel where I show you how I split a sock tube into 2 pairs of socks. That's made from 100 gram skein of yarn, just knitted into one massive long sock tube, and then I've split it into 2 pairs. But with this case, I've only got about 50 grams left, so I got mum to knit the 50 gram ball from cuff to cuff, pretty much using every single scrap up, really. It's just that I wanted it to match, and we were pretty spot on. I think there was only a little bit of the white with the speckled colours left over, so we didn't waste much. So we're using as much as possible. So I split that into 2 tubes, and you can see that the stitches are still flying free on this sock. That's the way I roll. I like to just let them I let them fly free for a bit. This is a BFL sock base, so they don't sort of slip undone too badly, and I can always pick them up if there's a couple that have dropped down a couple of rows. I have then used the contrast mini, which I had left from the original pair. So this was, it says mini cake in the Chepstow sock base, 4-ply, which is 75% superwash blue face Leicester and 25% nylon, and it was a 25 gram ball, which was about 106 meters or 116 yards, and I'd already used it on the first pair of socks to do contrast heels and toes, and because I only did contrast heels and toes, I've got absolutely plenty to do contrast heels and toes on this one as well. I think if you had if you were knitting a big sock and doing the cuff as well, you might be running a bit low, but I've got plenty to do mine. So I have added the toe on the bottom of one foot, and I've cut the sock and picked up the stitches ready to add the heel there. Like I said in the tutorial that I've gone through how to add the heels and toes in the tube and how to split it as well, so I will leave a link to that in the description bar down below, and I'll pop a link in the corner of the screen as well. It's separated into two videos. One is sort of how to split it and how to put the toes in, and the other one is an afterthought heel to show you how to put the heel in and where to place it, etc. So that is what I've been working on as well this week. So I'm a bit pitiful really, because all I've managed to do is basically a toe and then just cut for the heel. This one isn't even picked up yet. Oh dear. Basically because Jensen has been very niggly in the evenings and not letting me have a lot of knitting time. I think his teeth are coming in very early, I must admit. So that is what I've been knitting this week, but I have been doing some sewing. And I did do a bit more of the quilt blocks that I showed you last week, but I haven't quite finished another block yet, so I thought I'd save it till next week until I've got another complete block to show you, so I can show you the two blocks together. But I did have a bit of time where I made Jensen some trousers, and I have got one pair, two pairs. So these are the tangerine trousers by Sew Over It. Now they are sort of like leggings, but they are a baggy fit around the legs so that you can sort of pop them over things, and I've chosen to do the view with the feet in as well, so that actually you don't have to have those socks go missing. So I thought that they would be really handy. I have quickly tried them on him and they are definitely quite baggy on the legs, and they do come up really far. This practically comes up to his chest, the waistband, but it can be sort of rolled down to come up where he likes really, and I think that they'll last quite a long time because of this, because they account for a bit of a longer body. His feet fit really nicely in the little feet, and I made the 3 to 6 month size, and he's now 3.5 months old, so at least they should last him a month or two. He seems to be growing really fast at the moment, but I thought that it'd be nice to make him something to wear, because I haven't made him anything to wear for a little while. I used this fabric that I'd got from Minerva Crafts, and I didn't actually show this on the podcast as a confession, because it only came, I think it came last week just after the podcast, and I have cut it up and made it into the tangerine trousers before I've even had a chance to show you it on confessions. So this fabric is a cotton jersey fabric. It's a relatively stable cotton jersey, and actually the print of the spaceships is actually quite a lot bigger than I thought, but it just about works I think with these trousers. And I wasn't fussy cutting any of the fabric. I thought it would just be such a waste. So the pattern says that you need 1/2 meter to make one pair of these trousers. So I bought 1/2 meter from Minerva Crafts, and actually I was able to get 2 pairs out and also an extra waistband as well, so I should be able to make another pair with the spaceship waistband, and I'll perhaps do just a plain print on the legs. So now that I've done a couple of pairs, I should be able to do some plain prints as well to go with lots of different t-shirts that he's got. But they are going to be really handy. So I'm hoping that I'll have time just to quickly pop a pair of these on him so you can see what they look like, and I shall pop that footage here. So Jensen has agreed to model the tangerine trousers for us, and he's got it over one of his onesies here, so you can see that it's quite loose and baggy, and it does come up quite high. But of course you could fold over this waistband bit here. He's a little bit grumpy here because he wants a little bit more food, and I've just got him to try this on quickly. Thank you very much, Adam, for holding him again, and if you want to see him again for another little appearance, you'll see him at the end of the podcast. So one thing I wanted to say about the pattern construction is that when I first were looking at the instructions, I thought, this seems a bit weird. So you have to sew the top of the foot onto the front leg to start with, and the bottom of the front leg has a bowed seam, and the foot piece itself has got a sort of a bowed seam as well, and you have to stretch out that foot piece quite a bit onto the bottom of the leg to make it work. And to start with I was thinking, this isn't going to fit, but actually it does. Just tease that fabric out a little bit and it stretches over, so I think it's just so that it sort of gathers in a little bit around the foot. But To start with, I thought this seems a bit odd, but just to bear in mind as well that they are supposed to be sort of baggier trousers rather than leggings, and there is a version where you can do without the feet as well, so that you can use it for when they're a bit older. I think the pattern goes up to 2 years old, I think, so it's well worth getting sort of patterns like that if you're going to make quite a few of them. I constructed these completely on my overlocker, but I must admit it is a little bit fiddly putting the feet in on the overlocker. I did see a few people have put reviews to say that they've actually used just a normal sewing machine to put the feet together, but I did manage to do it on the overlocker. So if you're not really confident using your overlocker, I'd do that bit on the machine, on a normal sewing machine, rather than the overlocker. So the next section is Gadget, and I was using this ruler quite a lot for my foundation piece blocks that I've been working on over the last few weeks. Now this is from Creative Grids, and I find with sort of quilting rulers you can buy a massive range of different ones for different projects, but I tend to stick to the standard rulers because they can be used for multiple things and they don't sort of get wasted. I have a longer ruler that's about 6.5 inches wide to cut fabric from the bolt and things like that, and to cut strips right across the material, and then I've got a couple of smaller square ones so that I can square blocks off. But I thought this one is really useful just for cutting small strips, or where you want to measure 1/4 or 1/2 of an inch from the edge or something, and that's been ideal for foundation piecing. So this one I tend to use quite a lot for lots of different little jobs, because it's not too bulky as well, because sometimes you don't want to have to be lugging around a massive great big ruler when you want a smaller one to do the job. So this one I use quite a lot, and I'm not one for buying all these different types of rulers. I must admit I have got a Dresden plate ruler that I've used to cut out Dresden plates and things, but that's the only one that I've actually bought that's in the shape of a particular pattern. But these rulers that are my favourite are from a shop called Creative Grids. I found out about them from a quilter who recommended them to me, but they used to go to the Festival of Quilts quite a lot, but I'm not sure whether they visit anymore. But they do online shipping, and I definitely recommend them because I've always got my quilting rulers from them and they are my favourite. I have bought a couple of sort of omnigrid ones which I don't quite like as much. I like the fact that there's a tiny bit of sort of grippiness on the back of the ruler, and they do so many nice shapes and sizes as well. I'll link the shop Creative Grids in the description bar down below, but it's not an affiliate link or anything. So next is my blast from the past, and I have been neglecting my crochet, so I thought I would show you something I've made in the past that's made out of crochet technique. So this blanket is one of my favourite blankets that I've ever made. It is absolutely gorgeous. This is the Nature's Walk blanket, and it is a gorgeous pattern by Sandra Paul from Cherry Heart, and oh, I absolutely loved making this. I liked it so much when I first saw the pattern that I actually bought the kit to make this. I quite often think, well, I like that pattern but I'd like to sort of choose my own colours, but I loved the pattern and the colours that Sandra had chosen so much that I actually bought the kit. Let me show you a bit more of this. I'm a bit too close to the camera for you to hold up the whole thing in front of you, but I'll try my best. It has got a beautiful edging on the edge. I must admit actually, when I ordered it, so I got it from Black Sheep Wool, and I bought the Wild Hedgerow kit, which is the Sheepies stone wash yarn. Don't tell me off for saying Sheepies wrong, you know what I mean. But they had some of the yarns had been replaced with other colours because they sold out, and I think this outer colour, it should have been a slightly different colour. I think there's a couple of colours that were not quite right, and I replaced, I managed to get hold of a few skeins of the correct colours because I loved them so much elsewhere in addition to this kit that I bought. But I think I stayed with the yarn that was for the outside border because it wasn't a lot different. I think it was a bit more of an oatmeal colour rather than this cream, but I didn't mind that, so I kept that in. But there was some beautiful blocks in here, some really nice different blocks to keep you sort of interested as the blanket goes along, and I did do it along with the crochet along that came out first when the pattern was first released. And what I actually did is I made it slightly bigger than the original pattern, just because I got a little bit left over and I wanted to make sure that I tried to use as much of the yarn as possible rather than having it sort of stuck in my stash. And I did a few extra squares. I managed to get it so that it was square for them to have a border. But I absolutely love this, and Sandra's got really good instructions in her patterns, and she also shows you how to join the blocks together and how to do this lovely border as well. I definitely recommend this one. I did have a look on the Black Sheep Wool's website. They had the listings still up there, but they are out of stock at the moment. But there was a tab that said notify me when back in stock, so I think you'll probably be able to click on that if you wanted to see if you can get hold of one of the kits. But they're absolutely gorgeous. There is a list of all the colours that Sandra did use on her original, so you could purchase them separately if you didn't want to buy them in a big whole batch, because it was quite expensive. I think it was about 80 or 90 pounds for the whole kit. But oh, absolutely love it. Really beautiful colours, and I shall definitely be loving it for many years to come. So very pleased about that. So that is my blast from the past, and I have my Ask Me Anything question from the Ravelry group next. So this is a question that people ask me all the time. So this is from Iona, and she was asking about beginner dressmaking patterns and which ones I would recommend. Now, I would definitely go for one of the independent designers, and I in particular would suggest going for a Tilly and the Buttons pattern, because they have really good colour photographs to go along with the instructions, and I think having colour photographs really makes it a lot easier to understand. There are loads of other really good independent pattern companies around now, but I still go back to Tilly and the Buttons to advise people to start with because of those colour photographs. I think it really helps. I think sometimes if it's a black and white sketched out diagram of what you're trying to do, it's sometimes hard to understand if you haven't done a lot of dressmaking before. So I recommend going to Tilly and the Buttons, and if you actually go to their website, there is a section that shows some beginner friendly patterns. They come up in there's a pack of the ones that you can be bought in the printed envelopes, if you know what I mean, and there's a couple of books that Tilly and Buttons have brought out as well. But there are a few patterns that I have made that I would recommend for you to start with. So I have made the Bettine dress, which is a short sleeve elastic waist dress, which I really like the shape of, which I must revisit actually, because I was going to make some modifications to make the skirt more fluted out, because that's the style line that I prefer. But the Bettine dress is really good, and the Lotta dress is a similar type of dress, so if it's a dress you want to make, I'd go for one of those ones. In terms of like a top, I'd go for the Stevie top or tunic. I haven't actually made that one, but it does look quite a nice pattern, especially for beginners. Another pattern I would suggest is the Jamie pyjama bottoms. Now, pyjama bottoms are a brilliant thing to start with because there's not too many difficult techniques to tackle straight away. And last of all is the Miette skirt. That's also a Tilly and the Buttons pattern as well, and I've made that one, and it's a wrap skirt, so you don't have to worry too much about fitting. But those are all woven patterns that are good to start with. Pick something that really makes your heart sing, as well as going to be an easy sew, you know. If you're starting on jersey fabrics or stretch fabrics, I would recommend the Cocoa from Tilly and the Buttons, and I'd go for a more stable knit fabric like a Ponte Roma or double knit fabric, because it doesn't stretch as much, and it's just getting used to working with that stretch material. But I would definitely go for the Cocoa, because that's actually written for the thicker sort of double knits and Ponte Roma fabrics, so that you know that it's more likely to fit when you've finished. Tilly and the Buttons has got some brilliant advice on fitting garments as well, so make sure you read all that before you go and take the plunge and cut out your fabric. I would tend to use a less expensive fabric to start with, because no doubt, especially if it's a woven fabric, you'll need to make some modifications to make it fit the way you want it to fit. Well, I certainly did anyway. If you're very lucky, you might be a nice size where you can just pick like a size 10 or whatever straight out the box and make it, and it'll be fine. But I know that I have to grade from like 3 different sizes just for a top. So making a test garment in some fabric that is inexpensive and knowing you're going to have to make a couple before they really look lovely is a good way to start off with it. If you start with something like pyjamas or a miette skirt, there's a lot less fitting to do, so you're less likely to have these problems. So you might take the plunge with something that's a little bit more precious straight away, but do be careful. I would suggest making something with some fabric that isn't very expensive and sort of a test first. You can always use an old sheet or something just to make sure that you've got that fit. So last of all, I got my shop update. The Celebrate Spring sets are still in the shop, and they will be in the shop until the 13th of March. So we have just over a week now of them being in the shop, but they will be posted on the 25th of March. So if you want one of those, make sure you order it before the 13th, because they will be taken down and they are a limited edition, so you won't be able to order the bags or the yarn again. They'll be just for this specific kit. The April yarn clubs will be available on the 18th of March until the 3rd of April, and they will be shipped on the 8th of April. So just to give you the heads up on those. And one more thing, I'll be restocking some of the opal yarns that are in the shop on Friday at 7 PM GMT. And it's a couple of the sort of autumn themed colours that had actually run out of stock, and I managed to get hold of a few more batches to restock the shop, so those will be in the shop on Friday. So now I've got a little appearance from Jensen. So today Jensen is on his playmat. Say hello. And he has got his habitation throw, and this is a pattern by Helen Stewart, and this one was knitted by his nanny Liz. And it's in some beautiful minis, and it's from a number of mini sets that I had in my stash, either from Ducky Darlings or Back to Blighty, I think, and there was a few other ones that I just got that were unlabelled. But Jensen loves it, don't you, Jensen? You going to talk? You going to tell us about it? Yes. And why do you like it, Jensen? Are you going to tell us? Oh, lovely. Bless him. Say goodbye to everybody. Bye. I think he's a bit tired now, bless him. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye.